So, dear Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank you all for being here today, especially our guests from abroad who has been traveling to be with us today on this historical meeting on the genocide in China and the different torture methods, the concentration camps and organ harvesting. I would also like to welcome you to this ceremony we're doing today, where we are opening the call for nominations for the next Edelstam Prize 2020. And by conducting this seminar today, we would also like to pay tribute to last year's laureate of the Edelstam Prize, Ms. Li Wensu. But maybe more important also to alert on the current human rights situation in China. Today we will hear more about Chinese Communist Party tyranny and terror, genocide, and their high-tech mass surveillance, and the world who doesn't pretend to see it. And on this note, I would also like to really inform you about that there are no pictures allowed today whatsoever, and no filming, also because of the sensitive nature of the speaker and also of people in the audience, because as everyone is a bit afraid that they will maybe be monitored by the Chinese Communist Party. But let me first tell you a bit about the courageous Li Wensu, the Edelstam Prize laureate of last year and wife of the human rights lawyer Wang Quanzhang, a lawyer who works to defend activists and victims of land seizures. A lawyer who took on sensitive cases of police torture and defended practitioners of the banned Falun Gong spiritual movement. Wang Quanzhang disappeared during the 709 crackdown, a roundup conducted by the police, the Public Security Bureau, targeting courtroom critics of the communist authorities in July 2015. Li Wensu, she led an ordinary life, being a housewife until her husband's arrest and taking care of their only child. Li Wensu could have accepted this situation and simply waited for her husband to be released, or she could have sought an individual resolution for her personal situation of her husband's case. Instead, in spite of the dangerous and hostile political environment, with outstanding courage, Li Wensu chose to become an activist herself and organized with other fearless housewives the 709 family and mobilized them into action. This solidarity and mobilization of the families have proven crucial. They have filed lawsuits against the Public Security Bureau and tirelessly and creatively lobbied and campaigned for the release of the detained lawyers and other activists. Li Wensu organized several non-violent protests to raise national and international awareness. As a result of their actions and of Li Wensu and her fellow family members, most of the arrested lawyers have now been released, while 14 of them have been brought to trial and sentenced to prison terms. Mr. Wang Quanzhang, Li Wensu's husband, is the only detainee still disappeared since his arrest and the disappearance 4 years ago. Li Wensu has gone on fighting, despite being subjected to constant harassment, threats, repeated arrests by the authorities, and her child has been expelled from school. Wang Quanzhang, who has been held incommunicado for over 1,000 days without access to his family or a lawyer prior to his closed-door trial in January this year, and was sentenced then to 4.5 years in prison for subverting state power. Li Wensu describes her husband as a totally changed man after she and her son were allowed to see him for the first time since he disappeared nearly 4 years ago. She says, "He's a totally changed man. He was so agitated and anxious that I couldn't even talk to him yesterday. My husband's health has deteriorated during the long incarceration, He had lost so much weight, Lee told to AFP. When I asked him what he had for breakfast, he kept scratching his head, but he couldn't remember, she said. It was really emotional. This was the first time my son and I got a chance to see him after being separated for 4 years, Su said. However, the situation for the human rights lawyers is not easy. It's a government that systematically curtails a wide range of fundamental rights, including freedom of expression, association and assembly, and using a system of enforced disappearances. China's ruling party has repeatedly pledged to implement the rule of law, but there are stark limits of those promises. It rather undermines the rule of law and threatens the democratic principles. It appears absurd. The Chinese government claims to respect human rights. The embassy in Stockholm has asked me to withdraw the awarded Edelstam prize to Ms. Li Wensu. They claim that it's a great global conspiracy against them. So even louder, the Edelstam Foundation respectfully asked the authorities of the People's Republic of China to put an end to their harassment, threats and retaliatory actions against Ms. Li Wensu and her child because of her courageous and noble fight. We also asked the Chinese government to end the sustained suffering of Ms. Li Wensu and her child by granting the life and integrity of Mr. Wang Quanzhang, revealing his whereabouts, respecting his right to be visited and assisted by a lawyer, and freeing him together with other still imprisoned lawyers and activists of the 709 crackdown. Human Rights Watch has reported new evidence of the Chinese government's arbitrary detention, torture and mistreatment of Muslims in Xinjiang. The report on abuses violating fundamental rights to freedom of expression, religion and privacy, and protections from torture and unfair trials. We will today hear about concentration camps, a situation reminding us of the situation in Germany during the 30s and 40s. For 20 years, the Chinese Communist regime has conducted a program of medical genocide, by which it executes its opponents, death row convicts, prisoners of conscience, Falun Gong practitioners, Uyghurs, Tibetans, members of underground Christian congregations, and then extracts their kidneys, livers, hearts, and lungs for sale on the domestic and international organ transplant market. The China Tribunal is an independent people's tribunal established to inquire into forced organ harvesting from, amongst others, prisoners of conscience in China, and to investigate what criminal offenses, if any, have been committed by state or state-approved bodies, organizations, or individuals in China that may have engaged in forced organ harvesting. This summer, on the 17th of June, the China Tribunal delivered its final judgment. The tribunal's members are certain assure beyond reasonable doubt that in China, forced organ harvesting from prisoners of conscience has been practiced for a substantial period of time, involving a very substantial number of victims. We will now hear a bit further about the situation in China from experts that we have gathered here today. And I will now leave the floor to our independent journalist and documentary producer, Mr. Folke Lille. Please, Folke.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to volunteer to take on this interesting task to present and introduce and interview very, very interesting panel of speakers that we're going to listen to individually first, and after that we're going to conclude with panel where everyone is going to be on stage and hopefully deliver some interesting and important take-home messages here. I used to be a correspondent, a foreign correspondent. I worked many years in the United States, and also was based 2 years in Hong Kong during the handover period. Very interesting. I traveled a lot in China, done a lot of different stories in China. However, the last 20 years I've been focusing on producing documentary films, basically, and some of them have dealt with human rights issues as well. So please give a big hand to the first big speaker on the stage, Mr. Manyan Ng.
I'm going to give you a briefing about China and China human rights situation, and also why all these human rights violations has been taking place for so many years. Why nobody have stopped it inside China? Why nobody have stopped it outside China? Okay, and what we can do about it and why they do it. I think it's important. Yeah. So first of all, China. I think China is a quite interesting country. First of all, with its 5,000 years of civilization, China had once a glorious culture in many aspects. I think everybody knows. Unfortunately, in the last, I would say, 70 years, China has also become the world champion in human rights abuse, starting with the Tibetan Buddhists, and then the Uyghurs, the Falun Gong practitioners, the house Christians, the human rights lawyers who try to defend persecuted people and end up that they become persecuted. That's China. Yeah? Although in their propaganda they were talking about how they are completing their great legal system. Now, as I said before, why they do it? Why they do it in such a brutal way and cruel way? Today one of our focus is organ harvesting. And organ harvesting started about 20 years ago, mainly with Falun Gong practitioners, 20 years long. Yeah? And different independent investigation has shown that between the year, I think, if I'm not wrong, 2005 to 2015, every year in average, between 60,000 to 100,000 organ transplantation. And to this organ transplantation, Chinese authorities have never been able to show where all these organs came from. Okay? First they said it was from donation, but my goodness, you should know that Chinese people is the last people who donate organs. I mean, I don't want to blame them, it's only a cultural tradition. Because Chinese people believe if a person dies with missing part of their body, that may bring bad luck for their coming generation. So most Chinese people are not very willing to donate their organs, okay? And then later, the Chinese authorities say, okay, we admit it's not only from donation, but also from death penalty. But it doesn't work either. How many death penalty we have? Some is a state, by the way, it's a state secret. From 2,000 to 7,000, different estimation. Let's say average 5,000. 5,000 death penalty prisoners. How can you have enough organs for, say, in average, 80,000 transplantation per year? Impossible, right? So it's a big, big question mark. Now, I said we should find out why they do it like this. Why? Do they enjoy to cut people's, to cut the organ from people out, to kill people? No, I don't think so. But one thing is for sure, we should not have any illusion. Since the beginning of the founding of the Chinese Communist Party, they have a strategic goal to achieve. And that strategic goal is, before year 2049, the Communist Party of China should be the leader of the superpower, number one, replacing America. That has been a very consequent strategy. If you understand that, then you find a lot of explanation on what has been going on in the last 70 years. Okay, we have about 30 years left. So everything the Communist parties see as obstacle on their way to become superpower number one, they will use all means to get rid of it. So then the next question I said, why there's no people, no forces in China who manage to stop such brutal and cruel persecution? It's very simple. Because the Chinese Communist Party has been ruling China, at least the mainland of China, luckily, not Taiwan, not Hong Kong. Well, Hong Kong is becoming similar. How they rule the country? They rule the country by two means: deception and killing. Okay? They are master of deception. I can give you a few examples. 1950, when they took power, the Communist Party leaders, Mao Zedong and so on, told Dalai Lama, oh, Dalai Lama, he came to Beijing, okay? Go home and tell the Tibetans, don't worry. The new government will guarantee them high degree of autonomy. And he even signed with Dalai Lama 16-point agreement how to, to guarantee autonomy, religious freedom, and so on. It looked like it was true, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, but 9 years later, 50,000 People's Liberation Army marched into Tibet, okay? With Falun Gong, the same thing. Even just 3 months, 4 months before they started the brutal persecution against Falun Gong in the whole China, the Communist Party, represented by the Prime Minister, told Falun Gong representative, don't worry, our constitution guarantees free practice of belief, and you guys can just continue to feel free and feel safe to practice. And then 4 months later, mass arrest, mass kidnapping, I would say, and putting 100,000 and 100,000 of Falun Gong practitioners in jail. And they became the first big group of victims of organ harvesting. So why nobody could stop them? Well, because they are master of deception. In China, you should know that. You live in Sweden, you don't think about it. Yeah, we everything are nice, we enjoy it, and without thinking much of it. Yeah? But in China, you know that in 70 years, there's no one single media which is not 100% controlled by the party. You tell me, I'm happy to find. If you can tell me one newspaper, one radio, one television, which is not controlled by the party. Okay? Nothing. So you may say, okay, we have internet. Unfortunately, you have the most sophisticated firewall in China, the Great Chinese Firewall. In old China, they built great wall to stop invader, and the communists built the Great Chinese Firewall to stop Chinese people to get information. When you don't get true information, how do you know what is true and what is not true? How can you find out that and you know nothing? Actually, I can tell you, I met many mainland Chinese who came to the West. Most of them, 99.9%, they don't even know there is a massive organ harvesting going on for 20 years. How could they know? Because they don't report it in Chinese media. Okay. Now, so master of this deception is one way, and the second way is if you, for any reason, Yeah, maybe you were in Sweden and you went into internet and which is not blocked and you find out there's organ harvesting and then you dare to tell people that organ harvesting has been going on in China when you're back to China, then you know you are challenging your life. Then comes the next important way of ruling China, and that is violence, killing. Okay, so that's the reason why there's no power in China who managed to stop this terrible atrocity against mankind. Now, the more interesting question is, how come in the free democratic world like Sweden also has done almost nothing to stop it? Because they didn't know? No, that cannot be true. I personally informed Swedish government, German government, Belgian government, European Union, and so on. I personally informed them, so I know 100%. They knew about that since 2006, 2007. I was together with David Kilgo and David Matas, two Canadians who manage or who lead independent investigation on organ harvesting. So we together visited many Western government and parliament. Now, I don't want to blame them. The problem that they don't do anything about it is mainly two. One is they are also victim of the master of deception, Chinese Communist Party. The second thing is greediness. Okay, the deception makes them ignorant and naive, but the greediness makes them difficult to say no to the Chinese Communist Party, because the Chinese Communist Party always make it clear in direct or indirect way, if you criticize our human rights situation, you will lose business opportunity. So basically what happened in China is the Chinese Communist Party is like a bank hostage taker. They have taken the whole Chinese people as hostage. So every time they say, if you don't do as I want, forget about access to 1.3 billion people market. It's like it's no different compared to a bank robber. Okay, very similar to what happened 40 years ago in Edelstam, yeah, the Stockholm syndrome. I tell you, the Chinese people are suffering from also Stockholm syndrome today because you know, the first 30 years, the Communist Party of China, they were running China similar to North Korea today. You know, everybody was frightened. You know, they easily kill anyone who just say half the word of no. And after 30 years, they don't do it so openly. They do it, you know, underground. They would also today they digitalize everything, so you don't see the agent, you don't see the killing. It's all hidden. Now the Chinese people, many of them, they even say, oh, actually, our Communist Party is not so bad. You know, it's Stockholm syndrome. Like, you know that some of the hostages in Edelstam bank, they even fallen in love in the bank robbers, yeah? Just because he became a little bit less brutal. And this is what we are suffering from. So anyway, I hope the world should wake up. You know, it is not so simple as some people say. Well, there's no big deal. Before it was Great Britain, the world leader, the later U.S., and now China come. Well, it's not that simple because it depends on what values they are working for. We are now living in a world that every person has to make a choice, not between China and USA, but between the two value systems, democracy or dictatorship, human rights or tyranny, freedom or persecution. And between good and evil, there is no neutrality. Everyone must make up their mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this introduction. I think it was an excellent start of this evening. However, there might be one or two here that don't really know who you are. So why don't you give some background?
So I tell you?
Yes.
Ah, okay. Well, I'm born in Hong Kong. I mention it because you know what is happening in Hong Kong, okay? The great people of Hong Kong is starting a historical change in the world, I tell you. So I was born in Hong Kong, and when I was only 18 years old, I moved to Sweden. Yeah, you know, in ancient China we believe in reincarnation. So I think I was a Swede and enjoying my life several times in my previous lives in Sweden. And because I'm so happy with Sweden, everything. You know, the other foreigner complain about, oh, the cold winter, dark winter. I say, oh, it's nice winter. And they say, oh, Falun Gong doesn't taste. I say, oh, great, and so on. Anyway, so after my study, I worked for also a Swedish company, SHRIC. Many of you know, or today it's called ABB, ABB. So I work for them. I'm a very Swedish-made. I'm a Swedish-made engineer, and then I also work all in my life for Swedish company. First SHRIC, and then I moved to Germany because a Swedish company in Germany, SHRIC Germany, hunted me to Germany. That's why I live in Germany now. And then later, when SHRIC and BBC merged and become ABB, then ABB hunted me back to ABB in Germany. So, but I'm no longer working for ABB. I'm retired. Yeah. And before I retire, I actually already worked for human rights. For 20 years, I've been a member of the International Society for Human Rights, Germany's biggest human rights organization. And since 2002, I'm a board member of this organization. So actually, I'm here as a board member of this human rights organization.
That's what I wanted you to say.
And I say much more.
So why you're here? We're going to listen more to you in the end.
Thank you.
Panel. But thank you so much for now, and a big hand, please.
Сіздермен осы арада бас қосқанымызға өте қуаныштымын. Бүгін Шығыс Түркістан ұйымының құрылғандығының 86 жылдығы хатыре күні. Осы күнде сіздермен бас қосқаныма өте қуаныштымын. Және осы жиналысты ұйымдастырған Швециядағы органдарға келіп отырған барлық қымбатты меймандарға алғысымды білдіремін. Мен аты жөнім Sayragul Sauytbay, ұлтым қазақ. Бұл жерде енді қазақша аудармашы болмауына байланысты ұйғырша сөйлеймін. Мына бала сіздерге аударып береді. Assalamu alaikum, şöyle oturgan hem kıymetli aziz meymanlar. Bugün sizlerle müşahede baş tedalas oturganına pek xursand. Sizlerge minnettarlığımı bildirmem. Bugün Şarkı Türkistan Cumhuriyeti'nin kurulganlığının 86 yıllık hatırı günü münasebeti bilen müşahede sizlerle cem bolğanına pek hoşal. Yine bizni şunda men Xitoyga qaytarish xavfi oldida turgan vaqtida bizga pana bo'lib, o'sha kelgan Shvetsiya hukumatiga, Shvetsiya xalqiga o'zimni minnatdorligimni bildiraman.
Okay, the first was in Kazakh, and now it's Uyghur,
Yes.
and that's why you were here, because you understand it, and not the Kazakh. So please give a brief translation.
Yes, I'm very happy to see everyone that have come out to join for the for the 83-year regarding the foundation of the Uyghur Republic.
İsmim Sayragul Sauytbay, millatim Kazak. Xitoyga qaytarish xavfi oldida turganda Shvetsiya parlamenti bizni, Shvetsiya hukumati bizga pana bo'lib bu yerga olib keldi. Aminglarga bu yerda o'zimning minnatdorligimni bildiraman.
So I've come here to speak.
İsmim Sayragul Sauytbay, millatim Kazak. Men vatan
Xitayga qaytırılış aldıda kalkıp durganda, Şüetse parlamenti, Şüetse hükümeti bizne müşeke parlap olup etkeldi. Yani müşe Xitaydaki kalıqның makinesi siyasatda kurban boğan adamların nemesiga yakından bunu bölüp kelip atkan, müşe emnalarga rahmet eytimen.
So my name is Sayragul Sauytbay. I was born in Kazakhstan, and before I was sent into China, from the help of the FN Swedish government, I'm able to come here to speak in front of you all today.
Ben özümün peşinden ötken tağdırımda qaytılap jürmeymede bakıp münasebetinin aldığınca leksiyada ben sözlep ötkendim. Azır emdi Xitayning genocide siyasatının qayerden boğanlığını özüm gözüm bilen görgen müşe işlerini bayanlap ötüşümge orsatmadınlar.
I will try to avoid going through everything that's happened to me while being detained in China for the sake of timekeeping, but I will tell you a little bit about some of the experiences.
Xitay Kompartiyası bu Xitay milletinden başka asanlık milletlerde genocide kılış bularla yıldızdan kurtulup etiş planını Allah'ın planlagan 2014 yıldan başlap devlet kadrlarının maşlavattan devlet kadrlarının emmemizin pasportumuzda mecburi alda jığıp aldı. 2016 yılın 9. ayından başlap pensiyaga çıkan kadrlar bilen fuqaralarının yeni ballarıca emmesinin pasportunun tutaş jığıp algandan keyin 2016 yılın 11. aydan başlap müşe genocide siyasatını başladı.
This plan for the human genocide has been a agenda that's been existing in the Chinese government. It started in 2014 when they removed all the passports, and in 2016 where they started detaining everyone that's been retired or young ones that's just started coming into of age.
2017 yılı 11. ayda bir gün içinde ben bir telefon kabul kıldım. Telefon kalgan adam benim derhal birege berip duruşumda tapıldı. Andan ben onun da kim ekenligini nimişqa bardığalığını sordum. Lekin o adam bana artık sorak koymaslıqımda özünün kim ekenligini sormaslıqımda mağan eskertip meni atat degende ishki Xitayga ögünüşke barsa deb şendirdi. Yana bir başka bir telefon nomer berip men aşı jayga bargandan keyin aşı telefon nomerga yettim degen bir SMS yollap koyuşumda tapıldı. Andan özünün adamlara kelip mening aldımdan çıkıdığanlığını uqtadi.
I received a text message at first in 2017 in November, being told that I was going to get educated. And when I went to the location that we discussed of, I responded with a text message, and from the text message I sent away, they knew what my location was.
Kızın yaktışke karşı turuşta eşkanda hukukumuz bulmaydı. Eğer ben yaktisem o yerden yine ölüm kalkı kütüp durgandı. Şunun bilen ben aşı degen yere bardım, bagan dikenleri ben telefon numarga keldim degen xatni yollap koydum.
And after I was picked up from the location, I was given either accept a death sentence or just agree to this re-education, because there was no other option than agreeing to this re-education.
Birden keyin bir qurallı saqçılar keldi. Ular kelgenden keyin mening beshimga qarqaltı kiygizib, meni o'zlari bilan birga ip mangdi. Biz xeyli uzoq yurgandan keyin bir yerga bordik. Mening beshimdagi qarqaltini irvatgan vaqtda men ilgi Xitoy Kompartiyasining chiroyli ism qo'yib olgan, genocide qilib atgan konsulariyaga kelganligimni bildim.
They put a black bag over my head as to not reveal where they were headed. And then once they got to the location, she realized that she got to the place that the Chinese government named to re-education camp.
O Xitoy Kompartiyasi degandek o qonun o'rganadigan yer, siyosiy o'rganish qiladigan yer, Xitoy tilini o'rganadigan yer, bo'lmasa kasbga tarbiyalash, bilim yetildirish degandek chiroyli usul qo'yib olganlar hammasi yolg'on. O chin haqida o turmadan betar qo'rqinchli konsulariya.
All the things they said, it's an educational place for. Okay. Go ahead. It's an educational place for politics or certain professions. It's all lies. These places, these camps are worse than the most extreme jails that we have in the world.
Uya türbedeme biter korkunçluk bolup, uyada 2500'dek adam belki kamalgan. Er ayalların emizin çeşini düşürüp etken, kollarda köze, putlarda kişen.
The places were very similar to the camps we saw in Europe many years ago during the Holocaust, where all the women and men's heads were shaved off there as well. They had shackles attached to their hands and legs.
Ben uyaga bakantken ular mağan aşırı kamalgan adamlara Xitay tilinden ders verirse de bu yerde yani erkin üniversite boyunca başka bir işlerimi yardım kılsa dedi.
When I was brought there, I was forced to teach the ones that needed education, forced them to teach Chinese, and was forced to cooperate with other ones that worked there as well.
Yine mecburlar yine bir neçe betlik mahfi kelishimchatga qo'l qo'ysa dedi. O kelishimchatning ichida nim qilish kerak, nim qilmaslik kerak degan narsa yozilgan bo'lib, uning bir nimasiga, bir tarmoqiga men agar xiloflik qilsam, unda men o'lsa deb eslatdi. Men asha majburiy asha kelishimnomaga qo'l qo'ydim, ashada ishlashga majbur bo'ldim.
I was forced to sign a document that I was not allowed to read, in which a lot of requirements was listed, and failing to meet any of these requirements could result in a death sentence.
Bu yerda bir kamerada 5 aqlli kamera o'rnatilgan, bir nima yotadigan bir turmaning bir uyida. 4 budingda 4 tane o'tirishda bir cho'ng bir kamera bor. U yerga emishlar 24 soat kuzatishda bo'ladi, emishlar. Yana koridorning emmisi shunday aqlli kameralar bilan nim qilgan, aqlli kameralar qo'yilgan.
In the cells that we lived in, they had cameras in each corner of the room as well as the center ceiling of the room. And all the hallways leading up to all the cells and stuff as well were equipped with many forms of cameras.
Bu yerga adamlarga 3 vaqt tamoq berdi, 3 vaqt tamoq shundaq nachar. Atigan tamoqda, atigan kech tushki 3 vaqt tamoq asosan o'xshash. Berdigani bir odamga bir cho'mish go'shtning suyi, yana ishda kichik man, bo'lmasa kichik bir bolka, yana bo'lmasa ko'ktatning suyidan bir cho'mish beradi. Bir vaqtda berilgan tamoq shundaq bak nachar.
They were given 3 meals a day, in which each meal consisted of a very small bowl of broth and a piece of bread. For lunch and breakfast, that was pretty much, they had the same thing. And then during dinner, maybe it was a different form of broth.
Tamoq bilan tualet chiqisi bir yerda bo'ladi. Tualet deganda u tualetga bir mana qahvaqliq bir chelakni qo'yib qo'ygan har uyga. O chelakka cho'ng chiqaradiganimiz ashada bo'ladi. Tualetga o'ttasangmi 24 soat kameradan baqilab kuzatib o'tirdi. Cho'ng kichik tarakni chelakka tarak qilib qo'ygandan keyin u chelak to'shidi. To'shgandan keyin aytib deganda uni to'kishdan burun yana tualetga o'tirman deb ruxsat so'rasam jazoga uchraydigan gap. Shuningdek hech kimning ruxsat chelak to'lgandan keyin hech kimning tualetga o'tirishiga ruxsat berilmaydi u yerda.
And each of these rooms were, instead of a bathroom, we had a bucket with a lid on. And once these were filled, if you had the need to go to the bathroom again, you would get punished.
Shunday sabablardan yana bir qatamga tualetga o'tirish vaqti 2 minutdan ishib ketmaslik kerak. Mushu bo'yicha mushu har xil besimlardan odamlar tarafga o'tirgan vaqtda cho'ng taraf bandiga chaqishib qilish, kichik tarafga qisilib ketish degandek turli mikrobdan ketish, kichik tarafdan nima zaharlanish degandek og'riqlar u yerda shunday jiq.
Due to the very unhygienic environment, it was very common for people to get sick from disease in there. You were not allowed to sit on the toilet on this bucket for more than 2 minutes, and during all this time, you were still surveillance by the cameras in the room.
Bu yerda yatqanlarning ichida eng kichigi 13 yoshli kichik bola, eng cho'ngi 84 yoshli mo'maylar bo'ldi, cho'ng odamlar 70-80 yoshli cho'ng odamlar mabakchiq. Bu yerda yeshi o'zgarib turdi, chunki ular keyindan yanada yinglab odam tutib aytilib turdi.
You don't have time to make connection with people because of how often people get changed out there. You have people from between 70 to 80, they're the most common. And the youngest one that she met was at the time 13 years old.
Andan bu yerda bir qar uy bo'ldi, o'zlari uni xiyfanzi deb qo'ydi, Xitoycha. Bu qar uyining ichida kamera bo'lmaydi, bu kamera bo'lmagan qar uyining ichi, qar uy mushi asha kampda qamalganlarga jazolash, qiynash, nimalar tadbirlarni olib boradigan uy.
There is one room that does not have any cameras. It's called the black room, and this room used for torture, whether psychological or physical.
Adatda men dars o'tgan vaqtda ishga qurolliq saqchi biz bilan birga bo'ladi. Ularning ayt degan aytimiz, ularning yo'l qo'ymagan narsalarni qat'iy teshga bo'lmaydi, kutishga bo'lmaydi, yig'lashga bo'lmaydi u yerda. O ishchi saqchi biz men dars o'tgan vaqtda bizning yonimizda turdi.
There's always two armed officers with me at all times. And when these officers are around, you're not allowed to show any form of emotion, not allowed to laugh or cry, as it could result in punishment.
Ders o'tgan vaqtda saqchilar kirdi, ruxsatsiz besib kirib, o'zlarining jazolaydigan odamlarni so'rab chiqib ketdi. So'rab chiqib ketganda ular ashi qariga bordi, qariga borgandan keyin turli qiynash nimalarni tadbirlarni nim qildi, yurgizdi. Ashi vaqirgan nim qilgan ayg'aylagan va qutqizinglar deb yig'lagan ovozlarni 29 soat bu yerda anglab turibmiz.
When teaching, I could hear the people being tortured, and you could still hear the voices of the people begging to be let go, begging for the torture to stop 24 hours a day. And these officers would just come at any time during the class to pick out people that would be punished.
How many people would you say were in the camp? Can you give us an estimation? How many?
Sizce lagerda qancha son insanlar var? Lagerda. The camp that she went to was at stands around 2,500.
2,500, and they were changing all the time. New people came.
When some people disappear, they're replaced with others, they're taken on.
And what is your estimation? How many camps would you say there are?
Sizce qaraganda qancha lagerlar bor?
Men u yerda men bir ishladim, men yana boshqa ishchisi bor deb anladim shunday kampadan. Lekin keyin olsam bundan chiqdi.
In the fall that at the place she worked at, there were she worked with 2 others, but then from what she heard, there were many more than that she knew of.
How were you able to get out of there and eventually come to Sweden?
Siz u yerdan qanday chiqib shilsaklardan o'tdingiz?
Men u yerda chiqqanda men asha 2017-yil 11-oydan 2018-yil 3-oyga tashildim. Andan 2018-yil 3-oyda ular o'zlari meni uyga keldi. Andan xizmatimizni ishlab tursiz bo'ladi deb dedi. 2 kun xizmat ishlab turdim, men xizmatimni olib tashlab ular meni kampga so'raydiganlarni nim qildi. Apar so'roq qilib meni 1-3 yilda asha kampga kirib meni yurib chiqishsiz dedi. Shuni bilan Qozog'istonga ketib keldim. 2018-yil 3-oyda o'zlari qaytarib keldi meni.
They put her back, took her out of the camps in the beginning, but then she was required to.
Birde 3 yıllık kampına kirib, meni yurib chiqsiz dedi. Bu mening bolalarım, ailem yurishib Qozog'istonda turdi, ashuni sabab qildi ular.
So she would not return to this more patriotic sense again. She would have to return to the camp once every 3 years to get re-brainwashed. And at the time of when she was released, she managed to get out of China in Kazakhstan.
Right, and after that, eventually ended up in Sweden. Now you have, you're one of few people that is in fact an eyewitness to what goes on in the camp, and you've been traveling and your story has been publicized. What would you say finally, because we need to move on, What would you say is the most important message you want to send out to the world because of your experience?
Şu bazı insanlar arasında muşunu üstümüzü söylemenin en aslında siz bağlıydı. Bu vaktini kıskırtış için deydi. En ahir yapımız bu muşun aslında körüp, bu kançılarını körüp sizden en mühim yapımız bir modeli. Muşun arkada.
Ben demekçi boğundum, muşu kampıdaki bir bölüm adamlarını kampıda nimpılıdı, yine bir bölüm adamların emsiga jeçin degen, tuqqan degen nam bilen adamların emsini nimpılgan, Xitaylar bilen bir konuşqa üçtü birge buluş degen. Menin Xitay tuqqanım. Menin başında koydu. Ben onun uyuyu verip tamakta birge buluşum gerek, turmuşta birge buluşum gerek, onun bilen konuşum gerek. Ben ona pul verip 8 gün aşında Allah'tırdım. Yeni başında bulamdı. Muşundaq bu korluk bama deymen. Kampıdaki adamların bir bölüm, kampıda bulan kampının peşindeki adamların hepsi muşunda korlukqa uçuravatı da hazır.
So everyone who is not suffering in the camps are also suffering outside, where mostly right now women are forced to have a twin, where they're forced to share everything, where they have to live with them, they have to share their food, their money, and spend a certain time with these people.
Xitay Kompartiyasının bu Xitay milletinin başka milletlerinin emmisin yıldızdan kurtulup etiş genocide siyaseti bu. Bu degen bunu nima bilen din bilen ayırıp qarash kerak. Bu din masalasi emas, bu degen faqat ulut masalasi. Millet masalasi. Bu genocide milletni yıldızdan qurtish masalasi. Bu din masalasi degen faqatla mana shu milletni qurtish uchun qilgan bana, undan boshqa hech qanday sabab emas.
So she says the most important thing is to see past the lies of saying that this is an act of counterterrorism, because it is not. Religion is only used as an excuse because of the current Islamophobia, but to see past it, that it is an actual process of assimilation to a theocratic ethnocracy, to only have one ethnicity in a nation.
Hello, everybody. My name is Johnny Sågänger, as Folke said. I'm a journalist, editor of 2 independent news services in the field of life sciences. I'm specialized in politics, business news, and with focus on pharmaceuticals and e-health. My contribution here dates back to the 80s. I was in my apartment here at Kammarkagatan in Stockholm. Somebody knocked on my door. It was my neighbor. He was a priest, and he asked if he could have a glass of whiskey. We used to talk sometime over whiskey. And then he said, you know, Johnny, I've heard that in the Philippines, people are selling their organs to be used for transplantation. So I thought maybe you, as a freelance journalist, could just look into this and find out if this is really true. And that was the beginning of quite a big research that ended up with a book. After 4.5 years, I traveled around the world, visited quite a few countries, including China, to find out what the facts were and what were the rumors, urban myths, disinformation, and just to try to find out what the facts were. Because during the research, I realized that this needed to be an important part of my work, to find out what was actually true and what was just disinformation. So I spent 2-3 chapters of this book for this information issue.
What were you able to find?
Well, I found out that there was a commercial trade transplantation. And that was main finding, I would say. And at that time, it was quite important to do this fact finding, because people were still wondering, is this really true that it's happening? So I was quite happy that I could do that, and I could also sort of expose that this was typically a situation where poor people are being used, because poor people are the ones who sell their organs to richer people. Rich people would never sell an organ to a poor person. And the second main finding was that there were so many stories about exaggerated and sort of produced propaganda using the stories about organ harvesting.
You were talking about urban myths. Did you find any? And could you tell us a little bit about it?
I found quite a few, and one of them, the one typical one, and that has been spread a lot through the media, is that there are gangs running around in ghettos, for example, killing people just to get their kidneys to do transplants. And when I did my research, I found out that this is sort of medically not very practical to do that, and it's not really needed, since there was a market, there was a supply of people who were willing to sell the kidney. In India, for example, I met them, I interviewed them, I took photographs and so on. So, yeah, for practical reasons, there was not need for this. So that was the urban myth.
Your book is one of the first ones that came out about this issue, right?
Yeah.
And that's why it's a very important book, and I think you can hold it up a little bit better than you did last time for people to see. Yeah, there it is. However, it's from 1994.
Yes.
What do you know about what has happened after this, and what was the reactions from the outside world when you published your work?
Well, I got some reactions from the medical transplantation society. Before the book got published, I had very serious talks with them, because they didn't want me to publish the book, because they were afraid that, they said, we think you're a serious journalist, so we're not afraid about what you're going to write, but we're afraid of how people are going to talk about the book and how it's going to be sort of written about in the media. It will sort of put a wet blanket on the willingness of donating their organs. So that was one thing. But then, well, when the book got published, it was I received a lot of credits for it and so on. I was invited in many places to talk about it and so on.
A big issue, and we heard about it already here, is the information that there are mass executions going on where people's organs are harvested and sold on the market. What is your response to that?
Well, I would say that, I mean, this is nothing that I was able to see or sort of document on my own. So, of course, I have accounts of that with references and so on. I would say that when it comes to executions, there are some hard facts from Taiwan at that time, where there was a chief of a prison who told me that prisoners are asked if they want to donate their one of their kidneys, and if they do, they get sort of a certificate and also a golden sort of thing on the wall saying that they have done it. So this would be sort of a remedy to the crimes they had done, and that their family would sort of be more honored because they did this.
Have you been able to follow the situation closely after you published your book?
No, I haven't followed it closely, and that's why I said that I don't want to be viewed as an expert, current expert at the issue, but I've sort of followed the issue a little bit, and before this event, I did some research, and I mean, my conclusion is that this business of transplantation, commercial transplantation, has grown, and there is a lot more awareness, and there are several organizations and so on that are really fighting against this unethical use of organs.
Final question: the Chinese government, of course, they claim that this is not something that goes on, and they accuses anyone of talking about organ harvesting of executed people as a smear, part of a smear campaign of China. What's your reaction to the official Chinese response?
Well, I would say that it has been officially accepted, I think, in 2006, because there were sort of witnesses in the United Nations, in different parliaments, national parliaments, and so on. So I think finally in 2006 or 2007, there was they admitted from sort of central government that this is going on, but I guess that they didn't want to say that people were actually killed for their kidneys, but maybe with the same reason as they said in Taiwan, as they want to be benevolent and donate.
We're going to hear more updated facts about this later this evening, but for now, thank you very much. A big hand for John.
Thank you for this good opportunity to stand here to cry to Swedish people. My tear has run out. If I keep crying, when something comes out, that's what will come out. Because our tragedy is beyond oral explanation. Our topic today is about organ harvesting. However, our Uyghurs suffering, the organ harvesting only is a part of it. That's why I call it the mega laboratory on Earth. Since 1950, communists took over my land. They didn't want to develop it. What they did is that they turned this huge land into a rubbish pond or laboratory. First, they tested 46 nuclear bombs. Sorry, I forgot this. Yeah. This is my land, and this is our people. It's a beautiful land. And yes, little self-introduction. This is the Central Hospital of the Railway Bureau, where I worked as surgeon. Right. They tested 46 nuclear bombs in this area. It's very close to the city, only 140 kilometers away, the closest point. And as a result, the largest provincial tumor hospital in China is in Xinjiang. Compared to Xinjiang population, 25 million, the cancer hospital has 2,500 beds. The size of it. There's another Chinese province, it's called Henan. Henan with 100 million population, the cancer hospital only has 850 beds. This is terrible disbalance. How? And I was asking this question to myself. I said, how? Then after 2 years undercover investigation, then I found that is radiation. Radiation causes that concentration out of control now. This is underground test site. You see the road going to the mountain and disappears. See? So-called underground, it's just in the tunnel. So, yeah, this is the cancer hospital of Xinjiang. It established in 1994, only with this building and this building. In 2007, they added two. How many patients? How many can fill this up? Even with such huge size the hospital, there are still patients waiting outside. Everybody remembers that an atom bomb that exploded in Hiroshima. Hiroshima explosion, after that exploded, the nuclear dust to come to the sky. When it comes to matter that the humid and the cold weather, it becomes rain come down. It's called black rain. But similar things doesn't happen in Xinjiang. Why? Lopnor probably hasn't rained for 1,000, if not million years. They never rain in that region. No. So nuclear particles, dust floating in the air, and then swallowed by you or breathed in by you, and that is the forever cancer causing potential spot. That's why this leukemia and the lung cancer is very, very high. And because there's so many things we'll say, so let me just say, show you a few things, then you will ask me a question. In 2006, this is Hunan province, People's Hospital, free 20 organs. They are giving away free, they are giving away organ for free. And I said, how? How can you afford this? And then Chinese and the Minister of Health, and he said, we use that executive prisoners. That's true because I have done one in 2005, and I went to an execution branch and I removed executed half-dead prisoner because other prisoners they shoot to the head. This one is to the right chest. So deliberately make him not dead yet. So limit time for me to extract his organ. But the executed prisoners number, as my friend said, is low. But organ transplantation number is high. So where this come from? And how can they afford to give away for free? And many people ask me this question: how on earth you surgeon in China doing such things and feeling not guilty? Because I didn't feel guilty. Because we are born into the washing machine, get our brain washed, just like my friend explained. Then we think that to eliminate the enemy of the state is our duty. Instead of feeling guilty, I was proud of myself that time. Until I come to UK and come across with Western civilization. Then I understood human being has the right, and that is called human rights, which they don't have. Nothing. They don't. This one, due to the sheer scale of the organ transplantation, this is a medical paper written by 6 surgeons and published in a medical journal in 2008. And my friend, where is you? Early. He translated this into English. Right. Look, surgical techniques. After the donor had been brought into the operation theater, anesthesia and intubation was applied. That indicates that the donor is alive. Otherwise, we don't need anesthesia. But if this operation is only about kidney transplantation, then I have no objections. What is this? It is 2 cases of extraction of heart and lungs. So they took this donor's heart and the lungs and give it to another body, and they didn't tell you what happened to this donor. Because human beings, they only have one set of heart and lungs. And they are openly admit they are killing people inside theater where human beings should be saved. October 2017, I was invited to Taiwan giving a tour of lecture. I found this sign on the floor is very, very useful because I can find my destination. But if you see a sign like this, what will you think? This is Uyghur language, this is Chinese. Combination of these 2 languages only happened in Xinjiang. And what it says is already said here. Special passenger human organ transport channel. And this is sign on the airport floor. Imagine how big that traffic should be, making this airport to open one express channel for you. And then the other weird part is, all right, this is another one, and this is not in Xinjiang, this is in Qinghai, city called Xining. 3. This indicates that wherever this sign can be seen, that place is massively exporting human organs. Do they have such advanced technology they can make artificial organs? No, they don't. But what they do, they are supplying human organs. And the weird part is here. And this is a map of China, population density of map. And that 3 photo, 1 is taken here, this is Qinghai province, and 2 is in Xinjiang. And why? You can see how scarcely populated area can massively produce human organs. Who can explain this? Nobody. Only Chinese government. And just like my friend said, Chinese people don't like donate organs. Also in China, anything to do with dead body has to be far away from the city center. So people don't like to go to the cemetery to have fun or go to the crematory. But that is for some reason nobody wants to go there. And again, Xinjiang government, this is last year, is recruiting security guard with $1,000 a month. That's a very high salary. Crematory, it is people they don't want to go there. And still you are hiring security guard. What else you want to protect? What else you don't want the world to see? That is creepy. When I saw that, my whole body was, hair was standing out. This says that you have to have a big stomach.
Big stomach.
What is that word?
Strong stomach.
Strong stomach. Not the stomach. You have to be guts. Yeah. So that tells you there's something really, really hideous things going on. They don't want you to see. And one of the newcomer from escapee in London told me before when they executed prisoner, the doctors they go to the execution ground. Now they do this inside the city in a big hole with plastic on the floor, and then after they shoot, those police run from this door out, and all surgeons run rushing in from this side. Just take organ there. The first to come is eye surgeon, then heart, then lungs, then liver, then kidney. The last one to come is the surgeon for the skin. What is that called?
Dermatologist.
Why? Because in UK there's a newspaper called The Guardian. In 2005, Guardian reported that China using human skin for cosmetic products. You might actually both Chinese cosmetic products and products human skin. So those people, they shouldn't, and they have to be not scared by this dismantled human body. That is the thing they don't want you to see. This is too graphic. No. Nobody. Okay, because this is a hospital. I will not tell you where. This is a county hospital. In that county, all people have been told, not all, Uyghur people. Today, there's no work. Everybody goes to hospital to have your blood sample taken. This is one of them. This is inside hospital. This is also inside hospital. They didn't go there voluntarily, and then by force they have been ordered to go there because there's no work that day. And this has happened on this year, 1941. It's still going on. Why? You have these people and the blood sample taken. Is in this area there is an unknown disease or unknown pandemic? If there is, yes, I can understand that you are doing investigation. But if there's nothing, why do you need that? This can be explained how China's have that oversupplied, unlimited organs. Because all human beings, all Uyghurs, they becomes a potential donor, even in their home. You don't know that. That's the reality. In 1980, this professor from Kazakhstan who wrote a book, this book. In this book, he said that in 1980, Chinese government, there is a biological weapon laboratory accident in Xinjiang. That caused the pandemic in 1980. I disagree with him, but that pandemic was true. In 1980, there were two different pandemics happened in the same time. How? And the two different pandemics cannot happen at the same time. That's one. Secondly, all Chinese weapon design, product, produce, and stored, not in Xinjiang. It's inside heart of China. So there's no biological weapon laboratory in Xinjiang. If there's no, how can this thing happen? that I can say is they actually tested one biological weapon. And the Professor Jun Takada, who made estimation that 190,000 people might have died by the nuclear test, for the 1 million have been killed by radiation. This child has changed the world view on migrants. There's another child who died and then almost have gone unnoticed. What happened to the child? Because his both parents are in here, in the camp. And this child has nowhere to go. So he was staying with his grandpa, and grandpa is ill. So he come out and got lost and frozen to death in the field. That is a camp. And it is widely reported, so I don't need to tell you more. What is the new is this. Internet, a guy from internet tweeted this. See, this is a detention center in China. And then Uyghur people, they had been detained, and many of them, they had been transferred to the eastern part of China. And this is a detention center, and this is a transplant hospital. It matches each other. Watch this video and tell me what's wrong with this. Have you seen what's wrong? Look at his knife, his chain. That is the situation in Xinjiang now. You have to have your ID number printed on the knife you buy, or your knife has to be chained. This is, you can guess this is Chinese nuclear test site. And what is this? Chinese exploded with 46 atom bomb here. That is Soviet Union's nuclear test site. They exploded 254 in this region. And in between is where we live. So, my advice to anyone who has extra money you want to buy organ, just think once more. Our Uyghurs people's organ are radioactive. If you want to buy. Thank you very much.
I'll ask you as well to tell us a little bit about your life today. And it was interesting, we had a chat yesterday, and you told me about you were really trying to be able to work as a doctor in England. Tell us about it.
Yes, I was surgeon. I really wanted to work again as surgeon, but unfortunately, the British Medical Council, they think my English is poor, so I cannot work as surgeon. But now I am a quite famous Uber driver. Uber driver, taxi driver.
So you're driving Uber in England. It's a waste, I would say. It's better if you can work as a professional surgeon. Tell us about the incident when you were a young doctor in China. I'm sure you know what I'm referring to.
Okay, and that was in 1995. It was a Wednesday. My chief surgeon, he knows at that day I am the only one who didn't have scheduled surgery, so I was free. So he called me to his office Tuesday afternoon, and he said, "Do you want to do something wild?" I said, "Yes, of course, let's go. Do what?" And he said, "Go to the theater and get that extra large size that operation kits. Extra large size, it means you can handle any situation because everything is there. And ask for 2 nurses and take your own 2 assistants and ask for 2 I can't. Yeah, I can't pronounce this word. I don't know why. Yeah. Then take our one van, and I say van, but our hospital says that is our ambulance. Ambulance, there's nothing in it, just one bed. And tomorrow morning 9:30, wait for me at the hospital gate. I said, okay. I was quite excited. I was a young surgeon. Then next morning I got everything ready and waiting for him. And two chief surgeons. They appeared in a car and they said, "Follow us." Sure, let's go follow you. On the way, we were really excited. But because the way of traveling is towards the Western Mountain. And we have a branch hospital in Western Mountain district. But halfway through, we turned left again towards mountain. And I got lost because I never been to that part of the world. But our driver, he knows. He said, "This is the way going to the execution ground." And I was really scared. What are we going to do in the execution ground? And I was the only minority in the whole team. And I thought, are they going to kill me? I was really, really scared. Then anyway, it's just halfway through. So when we arrived there, our 2 chief surgeons was waiting behind a hill. The execution ground is behind the hill. They were on this side and said, "You wait here and come around when you hear gunshots." I said, "Oh, okay." So we started waiting. Everybody was nervous. We couldn't stop but smoking this. I tried to hide, we are nervous. Then we start hearing this noises, people shouting, chanting, and whistle blowing, and the truck is coming. Then gunshots. Gunshot is not like machine gun shooting. It's just like many rifles shoot at the same time. So we rushed in. Said, "Let's go. From the left side, at the slope of the mountain, we can see more than 10, maybe 20. I don't know how many exactly. Executed bodies. All of them, they have been shot to the head. So front part is blowing away. And the other one police officer said, "Go to the far right, that is yours." So why is mine? We went to the far right, and our 2 chief surgeons were waiting there and said, tell those others, said, "Take this body, put it into one." While they are doing it, chief surgeon called me to the side and briefed me what to do. Then I understood. He said, "You remove liver and 2 kidneys." Then from that moment on, I was quite excited. I said, "Oh, right, let's go, let's do it." From that moment, I become a robot, programmed the robot to carry out this program. Programmed it and just do this program. Then, I don't know how long, but I find that this destructive operation is quite easy. It's very quick. Then he took these organs and said, "Now you take your team back to the hospital. Remember, today nothing happened, right?" I said, "Yes, nothing happened today." Since that moment, none of us has ever talked about it. And what we want to do is try to be dead. And that was the only incident I was involved in.
But you personally went to the execution ground, heard the shots, saw the bodies, was elected to remove the organs from one of the bodies. That's what you did.
That was one body,
Yes.
because this body was shot to the chest.
Yeah.
Deliberately make him not dead immediately. So I have time to remove organs. When I cut through, I can see the blood coming out. That means the heart is still pumping blood, and he was alive. And he tried to resist, but he was too weak to resist because he was shot.
It's terrible, of course, but thank you very much for sharing your personal story.
Thank you.
Very big hand, Warren.